Hello everybody and welcome back to Let's Play Suzerain. Let me lower that volume a little bit because it's a little too loud in my ears. So, been a little bit since the last part. I have been doing a very poor job of keeping to a recording schedule. Not sure if that'll ever get any better anytime soon. Let's go ahead and hop into the presidential debate. The makeup girl dusted my cheeks with one last coat of powder as the lights in the Swedish Broadcasting Corporation studio flickered to life. Back during the '53 election, I had debated my political opponents on the radio. Now the debate was to be televised, like everything else these days. Let's check our reflection. I pulled out a pocket mirror and looked at my face. I didn't remember all those wrinkles being there 4 years ago. I took my place in one of the uncomfortable wooden chairs next to the moderator's desk beside the other presidential candidates. The moderator walked in and sat at her desk. I recognized her as a former SBC reporter I had encountered on a number of occasions. She nodded to me and the others. We'll begin in just a few minutes. I'm looking forward to an evening of polite and civil discourse. One can only hope. She smiled at me gratefully before turning back towards the cameras. After a quick countdown, we were live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Swedish Broadcasting Company is pleased to welcome all candidates in the 1957 Swedish presidential election. To my left is Anton Rein, the incumbent president of Sordland. Glad to be here. To my right, Layla Graf, former interior minister and leader of the USP. And protector of the legacy of Tarkin's soul, lest we forget. I'm looking forward to your questions. Franz Richter, leader of the PFJP. A new era of freedom and justice is about to begin. Gisaro Kibnir, leader of the NFP. Gressi Sordland. Mansoon Leek of the Bludish Workers' Front, formerly an independent assembly member. Indeed, the great Fethi Ejal, probably butchered that, and I once dreamed of a lasting peace for Bludia and Sordland. After his departure, I have recommitted to that dream and to my party. Oops. Game lagged out there. Our last candidate is Dennis Stahler of the Communist Party and of the People's Front Coalition. Together, we will not be silenced. The poor and downtrodden of Sordland will unite and rise up. He and Monsoon exchanged nods. Now that everyone's been introduced, let's proceed to the questions. I'd like to begin by giving President Rein a chance to speak about his decision to form a new party. What does the Democrat Party have to offer that the USP did not? The USP is stuck in the past. I founded a new party to turn Sordland into the modern competitive nation it is destined to become. No, you founded it because you could not admit you had lost. Let's see. I still respect you, Laylas. I had hoped we could settle this like adults. You were such a bright boy, President Rein. What happened? The moderator motioned for silence. On to the next question. President Rein has already outlined some of his second-term plans. What about the rest of you? What will your first priority be when you take office? You already know what I'm going to say. The moment I take office, I will push for the reforms the people have demanded for so long. Gisaro cleared his throat. As president, I would crack down on the enemies of the state who are threatening to tear this country apart. Separatists, militants, foreign agents, criminal cartels, we shall show them all the meaning of Swedish justice. Unbelievable. This simply proves the point I was about to make. While President Rein has made great strides in dismantling the mechanisms of oppression in Sordland, the hateful attitudes that built them are still very much present. We will never be free as long as minorities and women are still seen as second-class citizens. And of course, the number one mechanism of oppression is capitalism. One could say that, but okay, let's move on. Okay, seems like the, what did they call it? I can't scroll up far enough. It was what, the people's, what was it called? I'm completely blanking on what he said it was called now. And of course, I don't have the ability to see that information in the codex because it's, I don't think the codex gets updated throughout the game. So, yeah. It was like the People's Front or something like that. Whatever it's called. I think it was mentioned that the two of them are, sort of that it was what, the People's Coalition? Something? I don't recall. Whatever it's called. It would appear that they don't exactly get along quite that well. Okay, let's move on, Miss Graff. Well, it strikes me that none of my opponent's grand plans are possible as long as our country is still vulnerable to threats from within and without its borders. I'm just as committed to Sordland's security as I was as the Minister of Interior, and I will devote my presidency to strengthening that security. Thank you. Now, President Rain, you've already pledged to make healthcare a focus of your second term. Would you care to elaborate on that? I mean, both are very much true. We weren't able to devote as many resources to healthcare as we wanted due to budget constraints. And we should definitely be preparing for future epidemics, because they will inevitably happen. I think we're going to go with budget for this. Budget constraints during my first term meant I couldn't devote as many resources to healthcare as I had planned. I regret that now. Moving on. Mr. President, just prior to tonight's debate, your press office signaled there could be grander plans in store for your second term. Is that correct? Absolutely. Would you like to tell us what those are? You know what? We're going to go ballsy. We're doing it. I want Sordland to put a man on the moon. The other candidates burst out laughing. Oh my god. If we were doing a communist run, this is where you would insert, I believe it's Tim Curry, from Red Alert 3. This is exactly where you would insert him if we were doing a communist run. But no, I'm serious. Sordland is going into space. I agree with this plan in theory, but it would bankrupt our country in an instant. If we want to be taken seriously by the superpowers, this is the only way. Very interesting. Let's move on to the economy then. I'm sure many of our viewers would like to know how you candidates are planning on ending the Swordish depression. Thank you for asking. President Rain's mishandling of our economy has left millions of working-class Swords, especially minorities, in need of urgent immediate aid. The first step is suspension of rent and mortgage payments and a ban on evictions. Then we would move on to job creation through public works programs. I couldn't agree more that Sordland needs to help its working families, which is why I've developed a comprehensive program of tax incentives for small businesses. I will also implement a market economy in Sordland with state intervention as necessary to ensure the free market produces results close to its theoretical potential. And I would continue and expand upon the privatization of our major corporations. There is a massive potential in our country's economic capacity. I would push for autarky and transferring technological knowledge to our local industries. Sordland must control all strategic resources of production and be as independent as possible from foreign influences. We looked at the camera. We must increase our economic capabilities to then turn our goods into quality yet affordable export materials for other developing nations. I would also impose high taxes on the rich to fund military industrial research and development. On top of that, I would move Rain's ridiculous vice tax so the Swords can once more enjoy an affordable drink and a smoke after a long working day. Layla sniffed. I tried to say this to President Rain many times. With the government's firm hand on the steering wheel of our economy, the country will prosper as never before. That means undoing the disastrous free market reforms of Rain and Alfonso, as well as seizing the assets of Sordland's wealthiest corporations so that oligarchs can no longer hold more power than the state. I don't want to say that they are the engine that keeps our economy running. I don't feel that that's the type of run we're necessarily doing. I don't feel like 3 really adds anything useful. And do generally agree that we don't want a bunch of oligarchs. We've not generally been on their side all that much, in the grand scheme of things. I agree, they must be stopped. The moderator cleared her throat. We're getting off track. Mr. President, would you care to comment on your plans for the economy? As I said earlier, my plan for a space program will lead to unprecedented prosperity. Thank you, President Rain. My next question concerns Sordland's foreign relations. To the non-incumbent candidates, would you maintain the international alliances President Rain has formed? Of course I would. Membership in ATO was always the logical next step for Sordland. I'm looking forward to developing those relations further. I can't believe we were ever in the same party. Dennis turned to look at me. We all know Lispia and Arcasia don't give a damn about us. We will only grow stronger by marching arm in arm with our socialist brothers. Our socialist brothers and sisters. Sure. The point is, let's move on to the next candidate. I'm going to say nothing for this one. Dennis sat back in his chair fuming. If I may, all this talk of East and West, socialist and capitalist is missing the point. Of course, I would advocate for staying on good terms with Arcasia, but Sordland's strongest ties must be to our tribal cousins in Vogsland and Agnolia. Good luck trying to be on good terms with both of them. Because I do not see how you can be on good terms with both of them, particularly because of, this little island here. Heligeland. Yeah. You're not really going to be able to thread the needle and be on good terms with both of them as a result of that. You either don't get involved with either side, or you're going to have to pick one. Because war will break out over that at some point. We're basically already on the cusp of that. Together we conquered the lands of Rum so many centuries ago, and together we are pure of blood, or we who are pure of blood will rise up and reclaim this continent. Pure of blood? I wonder what that means. Strategic alliances are all well and good, but President Rain would practically give Dwight Walker the shirt off his back. We must maintain the ties we've built while making a great effort to assert Sordland's strength and independence. That's all the time we have for that question. Let's go and add this in. I just wanted to point out that no Sordish president has managed to garner the attention of a superpower before, let alone ally with one. Of course. Thank you, Mr. President. The next topic is of personal interest to many people watching at home. In the wake of the President's recent legislation, do you plan to act further to increase women's rights? I'll stop you right there. You can't expect a man to know what's best for Sordish women. The laws passed during his administration will cause more harm than good as generations of young Sords grow up motherless. Because husbands aren't allowed to beat their wives anymore? A little hyperbolic, don't you think? I've consulted intensively with my deputy, Manoli Suhail, on this. I don't know who that is. Whoops. Didn't mean to click. Her. Okay. On this, with the PFJP in power, we would expand on Rain's laws and help unprecedented numbers of women enter the Sordish workforce. More women in the workforce sounds nice on paper, but it's unfortunately not as simple as that. Look at countries like Arcasia. Women in high-paying jobs are those privileged enough to hand off their domestic duties to household staff. As a president, I would create policies specifically aimed at women from disadvantaged communities, so that no female Sord is lifted up at the expense of another. That makes a lot of sense. Remind me to consult with you on this during my next term. If you win a second term, I will. Anything to add, Mr. President? Yeah, let's go ahead. We were blocked from achieving things that we promised. We tried. We fought, we got some of the stuff, but we didn't quite get everything we wanted. We could have done more. I would have achieved unprecedented rights for Sordland's women had certain individuals not blocked me. That brings me to my next question. What about the status of Sordland's minorities? I'm speaking particularly about the Bloods. Okay, this is an interesting one. We can allow Mr. Leak here to sort of speak on our behalf, in a sense, which is a bit of a weird one because we have no control over what he will say. We just have to hope and pray, basically, that he will say, you know what? President Rain tried. He didn't achieve everything he wanted in this regard, necessarily, but he did help Sordland's minorities to some extent. I feel like saying that we have given them a voice is a bit presumptuous in a sense. In my opinion, I just feel like it's a bit of an odd thing to say, personally, for us. But I am inclined to go with number 2. The work I've done to further the Bludish cause was just the beginning. We still have a long way to go. Musun smiled. President Rain was only able to grant the Bludish people a small modicum of justice by exercising his executive powers. That has not magically erased centuries of anti-Bludish sentiment. I'm sure you recall that one of his very first acts in office was to effectively shut the country's only Bludish party off from campaign funding. The president had perfectly good explanation for that. Monsoon raised an eyebrow. Regardless, electing Sordland's first leader of Bludish descent would help to create a bridge of lasting peace between our communities, and probably result in immediate backlash of the country swinging to the NFP in the next election. Calling it now. For someone who is against the different treatment of races, you seem to put one race ahead of the other. His eyes focused on him. Sordland must be led by capable people who understand and can represent the majority of the population. This has been the case since our great country was founded. I find it very dangerous that merits are thrown out the window in support of an agenda, a blinded thought. A friend smoothly cut in. I'll spare you, viewers, another of the NFP's racist tirades. As you can tell, xenophobia is alive and well in Sordland despite the president's best efforts. I will work with the WPB to ensure the Bludish people get the equal status they have been denied for so long. Yes, we will all work together, gentlemen. Layla's voice was syrupy sweet. Surely there's a compromise between meeting the demands of violent militants and oppressing innocent civilians in a way that only incites further violence. To speak more generally, haven't we all had enough of upheaval, of promises of radical change, of having to check newspaper headlines daily to be sure our country is still intact? It isn't too late to go back to the way things were. Under the USP, the glorious republic envisioned by Tarkin's soul can still become a reality. Thousands suffered under Sol. We cannot go back to that. No, I disagreed with certain of the Colonel's more brutally oppressive policies. I shall bring Sordland's core values into a more enlightened, morally correct administration. You've gone over your speaking time, Miss Graff. Layla steadily folded her arms and sat back in her chair. It appears we have time for one last question. President Rain, given this country's rather turbulent political history, will you accept the results of the election, whatever they are? Yes, but I pledge I will never stop fighting for my beliefs. The mere fact that you have to ask that question is proof that Sordland is far from the democracy it must become. This is such a disrespectful question to ask a sitting president. The leader of Sordland shall stay in power for however long its people and God will. She was well within her right to ask that. The president must never be elevated above anyone else. Right, I'd like to end the evening by allowing each candidate to make a short closing statement. My party spent years shut out of assembly while the voices of thousands of swords were denied. It is time for a new way forward. The People's Front is the future Sordland deserves. Join our coalition and we promise equality for every man and woman, every blood and sword. I know Sordland is ready for democracy. Under the PFJP, you will enjoy a freedom you have never known before. People of Sordland, I have watched this man lead our great country astray. Place your trust in me, and I will put us back on the path that the Lord chose for us. For a Sordland that truly belongs to its own people, there is only one way to vote. Kibnir continues to sound like he wants to create an ethno-state. Which he does. But he continues to sound like it. He's not even doing a great job of trying to hide it, in all honesty. President Rain? Oh, I like number 2. I really do. I really do. But I'm gonna go with the number 4. I feel like saying number 2 is silly. Why accept my opponent's mediocre promises when you could have the moon? No, it seems like a silly thing to say for a closing statement. Let's just, go with a new day began to dawn. We must not abandon what we started. Very well. Thanks to all the candidates for your time tonight. The Swordish Broadcasting Corporation wishes all our viewers a good evening. She motioned to the crew and the camera stopped rolling. Oh, okay, that's the end for this chapter. Let's move on to the next one. Sometime later. Okay, nothing in the news, evidently. Election speech. Interesting. My term was almost over. I paced back and forth beyond the stage, gathering my strength. This was the last major event before the election. A massive crowd awaited me. It was the biggest gathering of people we'd managed to assemble during my campaign, and if my advisors were right, it was also the largest ever assembled in the Maroon Square, used to be known as Soul Square. Bordered by Hullsword State University, Hullsword Arts Sanctuary, the Library of Sordland, and the historic City Hall, the square could accommodate nearly 1 million people, and tonight it was packed. The noise of the crowd rose up around me on all sides. Would I ever address so many people again? Suddenly, my campaign song began. It was Morganas Westcor, a famous Swordish song about hope. The mornings will come. Then Peter announced my name and invited me to the stage. It was finally time. In my dark gray suit and maroon tie, I walked up to the podium as the crowd applauded. Around me, I saw a sea of Democrat Party banners and flags. It was as if people had painted the square yellow. I took a good look at my electorate. People of Sordland. I welcome all who dare to join me in the name of new beginnings, real change, and a brighter future. Not long after I began serving as your president, it became clear that I could not accomplish my goals by working within the USP. The same corrupt old guard still controls the party, no matter who is elected leader. My political opponents blocked me at every turn, but in the end I survived. Now I stand stronger than ever before, ready to continue what I started. Now, let us unite again under a new movement today. Under the Democrat Party's government, Sordland will be prosperous again. I paused to take a breath and hundreds of thousands cheered. I am honored to be running together with an amazing team. I'd like to take this moment to thank them. I must thank Monica for her hard work in leading the campaign to expand the rights of Swordish women. Monica walked out onto the stage when I said that. The crowd cheered one more time. God, this music is super eerie sounding. Like something bad's gonna happen. My greatest thanks goes out to all of you who came here today. You're the backbone of this campaign. Your noise is shaking the whole country. I had to pause and wait for the giant wave of applause to subside. Four years ago, you and I began a journey together. We came together to bring prosperity to this glorious nation. If we had managed to pass the reforms, I feel like 2 and 3 may make more sense, but because we failed to pass the reforms, I don't think they make quite as much sense. With the power you entrusted upon us, my administration fought to serve your interests alone. Today, Tarkin Soul's cult of personality is no more. His images have been erased from public places. When you asked me to fix our education system, I took responsibility and delivered the best results in 4 years' time. We provided the Swordish people with higher quality and more accessible education. We helped millions of children and parents with our child benefit policy. Every one of my decisions was made to serve all Swordish citizens, regardless of their ethnic background, religion, or personal wealth. Kind of torn between 1 and 3. Well, technically they always would have had a voice. I'd be shocked if women couldn't vote. I think it was mostly domestic issues that they had. They didn't have protections for things like domestic violence and things of that nature. They also had a completely different education system that focused more on home skills, cooking, sewing, things of that nature. Particularly out in more rural areas, at least. But I'm pretty sure they always had a vote. So they would have, in that case, already had a voice, technically speaking. We're going to go with 3. I heard the pleas of our women enacted to represent their rights. I enacted laws that protect and liberate the women of this great nation. These are pretty much the same, just slightly different wording. Might have an impact, I don't know. I worked hard to expand the rights of our minorities. I formed a commission for Bludish rights and gave amnesty to all Bludish people prosecuted for their ethnicity. Today, the victims of Soul's purges can enjoy freedom once again. The crowd was cheering, "President Rain!" We integrated Sordland into the international arena. Now Sordland is a member of the ATO. Took a look at my supporters. They were now yelling 4 more years. We have made great progress. We are making progress, and there is still a lot more to do. And that is why I need your help. Let's build a bold, prosperous, and forward-looking Sordland, a united Sordland. The audience broke out into applause again. Now we have historic goals within our reach. We will keep building a more hopeful Sordland. Nobody can hold us back. Sure. Together we have been building our dream of Sordland, the great Swordish dream, and today in this square that dream is renewed. Vote Democrat Party. I want to say the morning has come rather than will. Will implies that we're not sort of we're not on the cusp. We haven't passed, yet. As if we didn't do enough. Oh, no, we did a lot. There's more to be done, but we've done quite a lot. So I feel like saying the morning has come is much better. Because it implies that basically the hardships, in theory, are over. At least, that's what we're trying to shoot for. Thunderous applause erupted. Everyone was cheering my name. Let's make a victory sign. Raised my hand and formed a victory sign before I left the podium. That was it. The elections were approaching once again, just like in the beginning. Oh? Is it over? Oh, maybe it is. I didn't think it was going to end this part. Apparently, I was wrong. On election day, millions went out to cast their votes, setting turnout records in Sordland. Once again, your moment of truth had come. The United Sordland Party came out as the winner, while the Democrat Party failed even past the threshold. Your term was completely over. I was devastated by the results. You accepted the situation and retired from politics completely. It had been decades since you first entered the political arena. You did not know what else to do with your life. You decided to stay in Hallsword. No, I think we'd want to leave Hallsword if we're retiring from politics. Move to the coast of Benfey? I can see that being a reasonable option to stay in Sordland. We're close to home, but we can also kick back and relax in a sense. Or we can move to Arcasia if we want to just say, fuck it, go overseas. No, I think we're going to move to the coast of Benfey. With the presidency behind you, you set out to begin your new life in Benfey. You moved into a cozy cottage. It was a far cry from the luxury you'd enjoyed in Hallsword, but you loved waking up to the sound of the waves. You couldn't stay idle for long, though. You became an adjunct professor of politics at Benfey University. Sure, why not? As your star faded, your wife's rose. Monica emerged as one of the fiercest opponents of the new administration, rallying thousands of Swordish women to fight for change. You vocally supported her. Your sport buoyed Monica to new heights. People began referring to you as Monica Rain's husband. Years went by. Your teaching career, though unglamorous, offered you a welcome anonymity. You luxuriated in your new life as a civilian as your presidency became a footnote in Swordish history. During the school holidays, you would visit Frank, by now living in the Arcasian suburbs with his wife and son. Your only regret was that you never accomplished your presidential goals. So, okay, here we are. Yeah, Tarkin Soul, that doesn't surprise me. He's way up here at the Soulism, and actually, interestingly, slightly Malianist, which means he's slightly communist. Yeah, okay. So we're about the same Swordish reformism as Alfonso, but not quite as capitalist as him. Also, I find it interesting that Peter just kind of sits in the middle. So history will remember us as a centrist. Interesting. Between 1954 and 1958, 1.6 million people lost their jobs, 57% fewer maternal deaths were recorded, 8,222,000 people died to criminal violence, 779 people were killed during the clashes between Red Youth and Young Swords, 102,345 conscripts joined the workforce, more than 15,899 people with Buddhist descent were released from prison, 3,899 legal cases were delayed, 1,340 women won a domestic violence case at the courts, 81,340 companies declared bankruptcy, 2,300 state employees lost their jobs while 55 oligarchs obtained 10% of the Swordish economy, 1,143 news articles were altered. Yes, I'm sure I want to end. Well, I actually wasn't expecting it to end this part, so I didn't exactly have any ideas as to what would be replacing this series. Well, that's not strictly true. I have some ideas. I just hadn't really worked on them extensively because I expected this series to probably still have another recording session to go. We're probably going to not have anything for about a week, maybe two. Just as a heads up. Well, at least in terms of a series like this, I may or may not take the time to just record like some random content just to have stuff to upload, because I know YouTube throws a hissy fit if you're not constantly uploading, which is certainly a problem for me. I struggle with keeping to a recording schedule between work, doing stuff for myself, side projects, and then this. Yeah, I struggle with the time. I didn't got enough time. There ain't enough time in the day. But yeah, so we'll figure something out. But yeah, I'll probably try to go and record like some random stuff just so there's stuff to go up, so YouTube doesn't decide, oh, you're not uploading anymore, so we're just gonna stop, listing your videos for people to watch as recommendations and whatnot. But and it'll probably be about a week, maybe even two, before there's actually a replacement series. Because, like I said, I was not expecting this to end this soon. I thought I had like another recording session to go. So, like, at least 2 more videos I expected. Turns out I was wrong. We'll figure it out. But, yeah, until next time, goodbye and farewell. Let's go ahead and just return to the main menu before I actually stop recording. Now, I will likely do the DLC at some point in the future. But as evidence here, I don't own it yet, so it'll probably be a little while. But yeah, I will likely end up doing the DLC at some point in the future. Just not right now. But like I said before, until next time, goodbye and farewell.